The solstice wasn't decoration. It was the entire theological move. You don't sing in the dark because the dark is pretty. You sing because that's the night the light comes back. Pecknold understood that. He chose the longest night of 2020, of all the longest nights available to him, and built a record that doesn't arrive at hope so much as it waits for it with the kind of patience you only learn when waiting feels like the only honest thing left.
Okay, so I watched it that night in my apartment, and there was this. I mean, the silence in there was already so thick by December, you know? And then he's singing to nobody, literally nobody in the room with him. And I kept thinking about how that's the only thing that made sense to me that whole year. Like playing to empty pews was the only honest concert format we had left. And it just matched. It matched what was already happening inside us. And I needed that so badly I think I'd forgotten what needing something felt like.
Same as always. Arrangement, production, social awareness, and whatever else the editor decides to weight will each land somewhere out of 100 by the end, the editor's score standing apart from ours. One take in a stone room means every choice stays. He couldn't layer it smooth or pull it back in mix. The reverb's still ringing when he decides what comes next. That's the discipline you bring when you know the room is the only take you get. Load in discipline, not sentiment. You either trust the first take or you don't, and if you don't, you're wasting the room.
Fleet Foxes formed in Seattle in 2006 and landed on Sub Pop not long after. The same city machine that once made grunge. And that's precisely where the inheritance stops being obvious. Because what Pecknold inherited wasn't the distortion, it was the studio discipline, the obsessive stacking, except he stacked Beach Boys harmonies through Anglo-folk arrangements. That British Isles tradition of voices trading lines like a round. Instead of feedback, and that architecture lived in the multi-track, lived in the studio's ability to keep building and rebuilding until the voice became a choir that never existed in a room. A very lonely solstice strips all of that away. One voice, one guitar, whatever the voice can carry without proof.
And Josh Tillmoon walked. Their drummer, who left to go become Father John Misty, years before any of this lockdown stuff. Which I get, he needed to be Father John Misty, that was real, and Pecknold couldn't stop him. But it meant the band kept thinning around him until by that point he's not really deciding what Fleet Foxes sounds like anymore. He's deciding what's left of it when he's alone in a church. And that's not a pandemic workaround, y'all. That's him asking what survives of the project when the stacking, the voices, when all of that disappears. What's the core? And I don't know if the answer is the songwriting was always the root and the band was the bloom, or if it's he made a beautiful solo record and called it Fleet Foxes because he owns the name. Those might be different things.
You can't hear the join where one voice becomes two. That's the studio work. The seams invisible by design. Here it's all seams. Not worse, different job entirely. He's carrying the harmonic load himself now, which means every breath, every slight shift in pitch, it's exposed. The voice has to be truer because there's nothing else holding the shape.
The voice is flawless, I'm not contending that. But a song designed inside a harmonic web, where every part holds weight across 4 or 5 stacked lines, doesn't become the same song when you remove those lines and leave the singer standing alone in the room. Shore had the full constellation. This is solstice light on one body. They're not the same record pretending to be. They're two different problems solved with the same material, and only one of them asked the band to leave.
Y'all, Tame Impala's Lonerism. That record where Kevin Parker buries everything in so much reverb, and echo it feels like it's happening inside your own skull, rather than in a room. Was like being alone in a room full of people. And this is being alone with someone who showed up on purpose to be there with you. And I need that distinction to matter more than what's missing from it.
The songs were built for voices stacked inside them. Take that stack away, and you've got a good singer in a room. Not the same design. You can hear what's missing because it was engineered as a system. Remove one part of the load, and the whole thing runs crooked, the way a bike wheel goes out of true when you pull one spoke.
Y'all, but that's exactly the point. December 2020, there was no tandem bike. There was one person in one room, and the question isn't whether he could have made it sound like five. It's whether what he made instead could hold what needed holding right then. And it does. It held me. I don't have to mourn the harmony stack if the voice that's left is doing the work the record actually had to do.
The solstice framing borrows, straight from pagan midwinter ritual. The longest night, the light coming back. And yes, fine, he's right about what got subtracted from the harmonic structure. But a thing can be structurally diminished and still be criticism-proof in its intent, because intent isn't a scoring category, it's a perimeter. He built the solstice for December 2020, for no audience, for the specific dark that was happening. Not the dark that would have looked best on a studio record 3 years earlier. The arrangement doc is real and deliberate. The solstice framing itself gets top marks because it knew exactly who it was for and exactly when it had to happen. And those are the only two questions that matter when you're building something for a night that doesn't come back.
Zund. Anne and the Holy Trinity's got stone that's moving. You can hear it settle in the low mids, and that's real acoustic work. But a room doing its job isn't the same as the voices that aren't there.
Y'all, okay, listen to this one. Helplessness Blues, 2011, the studio version he wrote, and you would wait tables and soon run the store. Both roles imagined, both handed to her. And here, 10 years later, alone in that church, he changes it. And I could wait tables while you ran the store. He doesn't just revise it, he swaps places with her, puts himself in the service role in the middle of the year when every service worker in America got told their labor was essential and disposable at the same time. And he's not singing about some abstract person anymore. He's singing, I could. That's a vulnerability I didn't hear in the 2011 version. That willingness to say out loud he could be the one holding the smaller end of the stick, waiting tables while she builds something. I don't know if he meant it as an apology or just as truth-telling, but in December 2020, when people were actually losing jobs, it reads like he showed up.
The lyric revision is the record's only argument that lands clean. And it lands because he's not protecting the 10-year-old line. He's submitting it to the present moment, which is brutally fair. A public songwriter reconsidering his own gender assumptions about labor while the service economy is collapsing. That's not commentary on the pandemic. That's accountability inside a song, which is rarer and costs more. I'm giving it a 91 for social awareness because the revision itself is the only voice left in the room to do the work, and he let it carry everything.
A lyric's a lyric. It's what he wrote down. Whether that matters to how it sounds is a different row.
Y'all, when there's nothing else left. No band, no production, no room to hide in the arrangement. The lyric is what's holding it up, and he's treating it like it's a footnote to the real structure. There is no real structure here except the words and his voice, so revising the words is revising everything. That's not a category error, that's just what a solo record is.
A lyric revision is a textual change inside a vocal performance. It's not an arrangement. You start scoring growth instead of sound. Every live record in this collection gets retroactively higher, and we've stopped measuring the same thing.
He's right that a lyric is not an arrangement. Robin rewrote the words, not the skeleton. And she's right that the skeleton's already gone. There's nothing left but the words to move weight around with, so in a room this stripped, the words are doing structural work they wouldn't do in a band texture, which means they're both describing the same moment from inside two different definitions of the word arrangement. And neither definition is wrong, which is precisely the problem we're scoring.
So which categories are you actually scoring, then?
He's right. I was crediting the intention, the liturgical logic, the solstice as a frame, and I had no cell for that, so it leaked into arrangement where it doesn't belong. That's a confession, not a score. Concede. Gracefully.
I've listened to this maybe 200 times since November, and I know what that means and I know what it doesn't. It doesn't mean it's perfect. It doesn't mean the arrangement thing isn't real. But it does mean something in me keeps reaching for it, keeps needing it to be there, and I can't score that on a sheet and you can't tell me it doesn't matter.
The solo voice in a room is complete work. I marked him down on arrangement, not on what he can do alone.
Y'all, I know that's probably too big a claim for one band, but listen. He spent years stacking voices until they sounded like voices, and now he's in a room alone, and what you hear is what it costs to take all that away. And I think that's the point he's making. And I think that's why I've played it maybe 70 times this month, because I need to know if a person can sound like enough people by himself, or if the loneliness is the sound now.
I say the real thing. Is the room praising the music, or praising what it felt like to need music that badly?
Being alone with a sound and being alone in a lockdown are not the same thing, though. One's a choice he made at 22. The other was something that happened to everyone. The record doesn't know the difference, but we do.
Solitude made formal. Peck kneeled alone in a church nobody could enter. The lockdown's defining condition converted into acoustic architecture. What registers isn't the absence of the band, but the sufficiency of one voice filling consecrated space. Tonal purity doing structural work, stripped arranging that exposes the songcraft rather than hiding behind it. The loneliness isn't performed. That's the whole argument. Loved, not good. Both true. Except here both are. 87.
The spread's the record itself. What it asks you to bring, what it'll give back, and the brutal honesty of a voice that doesn't apologize for either condition. He's measuring the object. You too are measuring what the object does to a room that's already half empty. And I'm sitting here asking who decided that loneliness gets to mean the same thing to all of us, which is precisely the question a record this spare has no obligation to answer.
Y'all, he didn't just strip them down. He left some behind, and that's the thing that gets me. He had all of it in the room, all those years of songs, and he chose which ones could breathe alone, which ones needed the full band holding them up. That's not arrangement. That's him deciding which parts of himself survive the subtraction. Some of those songs were built to sound like a choir, even when it was just voices layered. Maybe they don't work solo. Maybe that's why they stayed home. But that choice, that editing, that's the record too.
The spread's different. Two clocks stacked high, me 20 points down. That's more interesting than everyone nodding.
The reverb in lonerism, that Kevin Parker trick of drowning everything in echo till it sounds like it's happening inside your own skull, is doing the work of intimacy. It's a proxy, a suggestion that someone's in the room with you even when they're not. Here it's the opposite. The stone's actual deterioration, the voice that owns it, they're not suggesting anything. They're just there in the dark, getting older at the speed real things do. When you hear the echo, it's not a bedroom trick anymore. It's evidence.
And that's what gets me. 16 words in an empty church, deciding the old words don't fit anymore, and he changes them anyway because they have to be true now, not just true then. That's not a revision. That's a man listening to himself and saying, okay, I was wrong, here's the right version. And he does it in December in a stone room where nobody's watching. That's the whole record right there.
Stone in a room like that, it records itself. Doesn't need us watching.